What's up, guys? It's Uncle Freedom coming to you on a glorious and well-deserved day off. It is raining outside, it is dreary, and that is my kind of weather. Today, we're going to take a look at rifle bullet considerations. Kind of a short dive into the skinny end of the pool about ballistics and what bullet construction actually do when we talk about rifle ammunition and selection. So if that sounds like fun, you want to nerd out with me today, go ahead and like, subscribe, tell a friend, because we are growing, and I appreciate it, and I thank you for it. So guys, I've done a bullet video talking about this. I've done go and no-go ammo. Hot button topic for a lot of people because nobody wants to have somebody else say, oh, your bullets are not as good. I've had a lot of people make the comments. I've had a lot of really positive comments. I've had some really negative comments. One I've seen more than once is, well, that's just your opinion. All of this is opinion, man. Period. Even if you work for an ammo company and you're shooting stuff into a gel block every single day for that ammo company, it's still an opinion. We just have metrics by which to measure things. A lot of people talk about Paul Harrell and his meat target video. I agree. I think Paul Harrell's meat target video is probably one of the best analogs ever created to show people, average person, ballistic performance inside of a target. That said, it's not measurable. And that for me is a no-go. Is it still cool to look at? Yeah, and I love what he does. But at the same time, for me, as a data hound and a guy that collects numbers, it's not as useful because I need to know things like how far did the bullet go in before it started to expand? Where did the problem happen? How far did it penetrate? Distance is not like to a point. Like, how far did it go? What did it do? How wide was the wound track? Did the bullet open as it was supposed to? Where did that fail? Where did the bullet flip inside of the gel? These are all things that I look at. So again, it's like I said before to another guy, yeah, these are opinions, but they're mine, and they're my highly informed opinions and my experience and my testing and my knowledge and my schooling. That's where my stuff comes from. Take it as you want. Again, one of the best things Paul Harrell does is it enough difference to make a difference? You be the judge. I think that's awesome because he basically says this is an opinion, make your own. So I think that's great. So talking about rifle considerations for bullet design. This is a big subject. It's much bigger than the handgun one because we're talking about different bullets designed to do different things. With handguns, we're talking about defensive load versus target load. There are considerations that I mentioned in the other one, like velocity, lead antimony, jacket construction, the hollow point construction, using solid copper versus lead, all of that stuff, you know, having a tip inside of it, all of these things factor into handguns, but like there are a lot more options when we start talking about rifle. And one of the biggest things we're talking about with rifle is we're talking velocity, man. It's coming out fast. It's going to work. Like, I mean, I wouldn't get shot by a spicy 22 at any distance, even if it's a full metal jacket and it's only going to give me an ice pick wound. Still going to suck. Don't want to be part of it. That said, what we're looking for when we do this stuff is the options we're looking for are the things that fail the least often and are most proven and designed to do what they're supposed to do. So when we first look at rifle bullet considerations, the first thing we have to decide is, what do I want it to do? And what is my perceived situation in which this ammo would be used? Super important part, right? Because if you don't have like a goal, you're never going to get to it. You know, and you have to ask yourself certain questions. How long is my rifle barrel? How heavy of a bullet do I want to use? Do I need barrier penetration? Am I expected to make longer distance shots, or am I only going to be shooting at 25 yards? These are questions you have to answer. I can't answer them for you. You have to make those decisions. And that said, with rifle ammunition, your performance in rifle ammunition is directly tied to your velocity. So that means if you're running a 5.56 gun, which most people do, and you're running a 10.5 barrel, you are not going to achieve the same performance that I would see out of, say, a 16-inch or an 18-inch gun. So your barrel length, you've got to keep that in the back of your head. And if you're doing this stuff and you're picking or hand loading and you're not getting actual velocity data from a chronograph, multiple sources if possible, you're not getting the good information. Like for me, I use Pro Chrono DLX for handguns. I use a Pro Chrono DLX for rifle as well, but I also use Lab Radar and Magneto Speed. Most of the time when I'm shooting, if I'm shooting the Pro Chrono with a rifle, I am shooting a Magneto Speed and through the Pro Chrono because I want comparable results for data. Lab Radar is awesome. I use that for handgun and for rifle as well. So we talked about that. Now the one areas where like rifle barrel length doesn't seem to matter is like 300 blackout, because I can take a 9-inch 300 blackout and achieve the exact same results that I can out of a like 14-inch 300 blackout. And the reason being is because the powder is designed to burn faster. You're running a pistol length gas system. You're achieving that full burn at 8.5 to 9 inches. It doesn't matter if you go farther. You're not really picking up anything. You're just now complying with arbitrary laws that the government made. So it doesn't really matter as much in 300 blackout, but in 5.56, which is what I'm basing most of this video off of, as well as in 308 and 6 arc and stuff like that, velocity is important, because the faster stuff goes, the more efficient, the quicker it gets to target, the less time it has for wind to affect the bullet on the way there, the less time it's in the air for gravity to take hold of it. So faster does equal flatter. Faster also equals less time in the wind. But faster is not always the answer, and we'll look at some of why. So once you've made your initial decision of whether or not you're going to shoot, what your criteria is for what you need, one of the best options for people, especially in defensive use with an AR platform rifle in 5.56, is going to be the Varmint Round. And the reason I harp on the Varmint Round, because the Varmint Round is designed to enter thin-skinned animals like coyotes, deliver all of its energy, fragment and dematerialize the projectile, not exiting, protecting the hide on the other side, but dumping all 1,000+ foot-pounds of energy inside of the target. That's a Varmint Round. When we look at varmint rounds, they have very specific criteria that is in line with every varmint round you've ever seen. You see the VMAX, or the Varmageddon, the ballistic tip from Nosler. All of these are designed with the same thing. Basically, you have a lead core with a hollow point, a very, very thin jacket that's drawn up to meet the ballistic tip. The ballistic tip is there to offer you better aerodynamics and to ensure dematerialization, like when it hits stuff, but mostly aerodynamics. So when we start talking about that side of it, that bullet was never designed to stay together through things like shoulder bones and barriers and stuff like that. It was designed to hit a soft target and just come the fuck apart, right? That's what we're looking at with a varmint round. That is consistent no matter what. Even if we look into some of the frangible rounds that you would get, like a varmint grenade or the Barnes MPG, you're talking about bullets that are designed to just come apart, leaving all of their energy there. But when we still look at the other half of that, which is the frangible side of stuff, which is a copper and polymer matrix stuff that's compressed and formed into a bullet, those are green rounds, so you don't have lead. Lead antimony, having a softer lead that will destroy itself inside of a target, is not as important because it doesn't have any lead in it. But if we look at something as simple as, say, like this is a 55 grain soft point projectile. You see a tiny boat tail on the back there. You can see the cantilever and the soft point. Now, if I compare that to, say, a 55 grain MPG round, it's a lot longer. And it's the same weight bullet. The difference is there's no lead. Lead is super dense. There's no lead in this bullet, which means I get a longer bullet, which is going to have a better ballistics coefficient, but I'm also not going to be able to run the same powder loads that I would run with this guy because I'd overpressure the system. But that said, these are remarkably accurate, even the fragmenting stuff, and it's going to hit, and it's going to do damage. It's going to come apart. That's just what it does. It's going to be useless on barriers because it was never designed to do it. Again, pick your bullet based on your perceived environment you're going to use in it. Probably one of the more famous ones is this guy. So this is a 50 grain Barnes, but this is the 50 grain Barnes varmint grenade. This is also a compressed thing, like I've talked about these before in another video. If you shoot a tomato with this, you get dust coming out the back of the tomato. Incredibly rapid dematerialization of a projectile. Gonna make a mess inside of the target, but it's going to put the target down. But then again, you lose barrier. Again, pick your stuff based on what it is you want to do. Your next step up from there is going to be your copper bullets, your copper expanding bullets, your CX, your GMX rounds, your TTSX, your TSX rounds from Barnes and stuff like that. You're looking, or your E-tip, you're looking at a solid copper bullet, which is homogeneous. That means there's no lead in it, and it's going to be all copper alloy all the way through. What you get with that is an incredibly tough bullet. Whether that is hunting whitetails with a 30 cal or bad guy in your house, they're going to be tough. They are going to be barrier blind. They're going to go through barriers. They're going to still deliver excellent terminal performance on a target. But one of the things you're going to run into, much like the copper matrix projectiles in frangible, you are now going to have a bullet that is longer for its given weight because copper is, again, less dense, though tougher than the lead alloy. A great example of a copper round we would have here would be, so we talked about the 55 grain soft point, right? There you go, 55 grain soft point. Now we compare that over to a 53 grain GMX. It is a much longer bullet. And again, it's designed to do a very different thing. That is a much tougher bullet. I trust them. I use them. That is the TAP Patrol bullet, the 53 grain copper expanding with the plug inside of it. But again, the Barnes TTSX, TSX, E-tips from Nosler, the GMX rounds, the CX rounds from Hornady, they're all going to do the same thing. They're going to expand. They're going to deliver controlled expansion, deep penetration, and barrier blind performance. Again, pick your bullet based on your perceived environment. I don't know if y'all picked up a trend yet, but that's super important. Your next up you're going to run from there is one I told everybody to stay away from for the most part, and that's your standard range ammo. So this is an example of a range bullet. This is an SS-109 projectile, which is the 855 projectile. So this has a mild steel core in here. This is a very inaccurate bullet because of the basic design function. It's a lot harder to center the mass of a mild steel core than it is to swage lead inside of a jacket. These are great for the range and shooting targets and stuff like that. And in a pinch, if you had the 55 grain version, you could do worse. Like this is worse. But this is a standard bullet. This is not a defensive round. This is for shooting targets. Outside of that, now you move into two of the most common rounds for people for self-defense ammo that people talk about, and that is the boat tail hollow point or match round, and then the soft point bonded round. Whether that's the Nosler partition, the Ranger solid base, the gold dots, you're talking about a round that is mechanically or chemically bonded to the jacket. So it won't separate, it won't dematerialize, it's going to stay together, it's going to penetrate deeper, hitting more vitals. And also, if you get into 5.56, the velocity is going to keep you from having an over-penetration issue. But this applies in 308. We've been using bonded soft point projectiles for a long time as hunting ammunition because that's what they are. So if we look at the bonded ammunition, stuff in that realm, we look at stuff like this guy here. So this is a 30 cal offering. This is a 180 grain Hornady Super Shock Tip. So I have a ballistic tip. Now the difference in the Super Shock Tip when we actually look at this is I have a cavity underneath this ballistic tip. It's a hollow cavity and they draw the copper jacket up around the tip of the projectile. But I have a interlock base to it, an actual crimp ring. I got the box here. Cutaways are great. So we have an interlock ring down here in the bottom, this copper wedge that runs out into the lead core. This also uses a higher antimony lead core, meaning it's going to be a harder lead alloy, keeping it from expanding too quickly so that you achieve adequate penetration as it goes through a target. Things like the 75 grain interlock boat tail hollow point from Hornady, great round, does the same thing. Any of the bonded soft point projectiles you can get in a 5.56 does the same thing. Some of these I picked 30 cals because it's a lot easier for me to show you the 30 cal than it is the 5.56. So using something that is a hunting bullet, even something as simple as this. This is a Spear Big Game 165 grain soft point boat tail. So you see the boat tail here, and then you have your soft point. This is going to give me controlled expansion in a media or an animal or a shit bag without dumping all of its energy too quickly, ensuring that I hit vital targets and move on through. But that's what you get with bonded. These things are also going to perform better through barriers because the bullet's designed not to come apart. That's important. Talked about that with handgun ammo. And then your last one of that is your match ammo. Now, there are things to keep in mind with match ammo. Match ammo was never designed from the start as a defensive round. It was designed to be incredibly accurate. People always get this misconception with match ammo. It's got a hollow point. It's meant to expand. No, it is not. So basically what you have is you have in a boat tail hollow point round, you have the lead core swaged into the copper jacket. Usually a thinner jacket in a round. So swaged into this jacket. And then what they do is they draw the copper jacket up to a point, increasing its aerodynamic efficiency to what's known as the meat plat, the little flat part on top of the bullet. Yes, there is a hollow cavity below that tip, but it was never designed or intended to expand. All of your weight was kept rearward and consolidated in a very consistent platform wrapped inside of a very aerodynamically efficient jacket design. That's what a match round is. Now, does that mean match rounds are ineffective on soft targets? Absolutely not, man. The Mark 262 is probably one of the most devastating rounds ever issued out to the military to take down bad guys. It just works. And one of the reasons it works is because your weight is rearward and you have a hollower point. When it hits, it starts destabilizing and it can fragment pretty reliably. The one thing you have to keep in mind with match ammo, boat tail hollow points, is it's not as instantaneous as it is with, say, a varmint round. If I hit you with a varmint round, it's coming apart pretty much immediately. Like, I'm dumping energy right away. Whereas if you hit somebody with a boat tail hollow point, you're going to get an 1 to 2 inch neck into the gel, and then it's going to start doing what it does. Something to keep in mind with a 308, that can get that long. So you're talking about penetrating 3-4 inches sometimes before the bullet starts doing what it does. Does that make it less effective? It can, depending on where you hit somebody or a thing. But it still reliably fragments. Now, when we talk about, you know, this kind of stuff for match ammo, most of what everybody has in their head is something like this for a 5.56. This is a 77 grain boat tail hollow point round. This is actually the Berger 77 grain OTM tack. And then the other one people think about all the time is something like this. So this is a Sierra 77 grain tipped Match King. That tip only increases my aerodynamic efficiency. It does not serve the same function as the tip would on a super shock tip. The tip on a super shock tip is designed to create aerodynamic efficiency. Same thing. However, that's covering up an actual hollow cavity inside of the bullet designed to make the bullet expand. This is not. This is just there to create aerodynamic efficiency, nothing else. There are options also from Hornady. So this is a 73 grain ELDM. So I have the same ballistic tip on there, the same kind of beautiful profile to that bullet. But it's designed for aerodynamic efficiency, hitting the target, less wind drift, that kind of stuff. Even if we look at a big 308 version. So this is a 175 grain Match King. So we see the boat tail again, and we have that little tiny hollow point there. Again, that's not meant to expand. That's just a hole in the bullet. There are some other versions of match rounds that you will see. Some of those versions are things like this. This is a 168 grain AMAX from Hornady. So this is very close to a varmint grenade. And actually, there's a cutaway on the front of the box for this guy. So if we look at the AMAX, you will see here where they draw the jacket up around the tip itself. But this is not designed as a hollow point. It does fragment pretty reliably. And your final option when we talk about match bullets is going to be something super bougie, and that is something along the lines of Hornady's A-tip. So this is a 6mm A-tip. This is designed for use in the 6mm arc. Pretty cool projectile. Comes in probably the bougiest box known to man. So, yeah. Even comes with a little Crown Royal bag to polish your bullets. They come packaged in trays like this so nobody touches them. But this is 110 grain A-tip. So we have the exact same function as the AMAX, this guy, except we are molded into a much more consistent aluminum tip and a slightly different bullet profile. So there's your basics on bullets, right? Like, what kind of bullets do what? And if you want me to go further into each individual one, this was more of a 30,000-foot view of considerations for ammo. We talk about jacket thickness because jacket thickness has the ability to either make a bullet dematerialize when it hits tissue. It also has the ability to slow the bullet's expansion down, keeping it together. Something like an SST that's got a thicker jacket around to it that's designed to be tough and durable as it penetrates. Things like the Berger OTM tack, specifically designed with a thicker jacket to make it more barrier blind and be able to penetrate a little better before it fragments and does what, you know, OTM rounds are known to do in tissue. But like when we look at that stuff, so if you think about it, the best way to look at it, if you look at a varmint bullet, varmint bullets are thin. If you look at a hunting round, like a boat tail hollow point big game from Spear, the hot course from Spear, the gold dots, the SSTs, those are all designed to penetrate. So big animals, thicker jacket, tiny animals, thinner jacket, right? Easy stuff. The next part we would have to look at with this is going to be your bullet shape. And this comes more into play when we start talking about long-range efficiency. And there's a couple of parts to bullet shape. You hear the words boat tail all the time. You have to have a boat tail or it's not accurate. You have to have a boat tail or it's not accurate. So first we'll dispel that. That is not entirely true. So here's a great example. This is a 52 grain Barnes hollow point match burner. So this is not a boat tail. This is your standard old flat base bullet. Now, inside of 300 yards, you are going to be very hard-pressed to find a difference between the efficiency and accuracy of a boat tail hollow point versus a flat base hollow point. I will tell you some of the prettiest groups I've ever shot was with this bullet. We're talking .3s with this out of an 18-inch AR. Scary, accurate round. But it has a problem. That problem is it doesn't have a boat tail. Now, the boat tail doesn't immediately make your bullet more accurate. What it does is it makes your bullet more efficient flying through the air. Because if I took a 52 grain bullet, and then or even a better example, because it's a little bigger, I don't have one up here, damn it. If I took a 150 grain flat base full round for 308, and then I took a 150 boat tail, the 150 boat tail is going to be longer. And in the game of ballistic coefficient, which is your drag coefficient when you shoot a round, the longer your bullet is, the more efficient your round will be. That's the reason things like 6 Creedmoor, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6 ARC, that's the reason they're so efficient, is they have this very long, very sleek bullet design that actually cuts through the wind. It's not as affected by wind drift or wind drag, and it retains more of its energy because it flies through the air more efficiently. That's what we're looking at with a boat tail. But inside of 300 yards, a flat base is going to be just as accurate and probably not losing as much steam as you would think out of a normal gun. But if we bump that up to beyond 300 yards, say 500 or 600 yards, that boat tail is going to come into play because you're going to get easier ability to call the wind, because if you're off, it doesn't drift as much in the wind. It's also going to be more efficient, carrying more energy downrange, making a bigger impact. So that's what your boat tail's for, in case you were wondering, and it looks cool. And it's also very, very, very much so easier to load if you're a hand loader. So next up, we've got, and it also goes to your bullet shape, and that is your ogive type. I talked about ogive in one video. A guy was like, I have no idea what that means. Okay, so ogive refers to the bullet shape. So this whole, how the bullet looks, right? In a bullet, you have a very standardized ogive shape, which you would picture in your head if you pictured a bullet, and that is actually the tangent ogive. So a good example of a tangent ogive is something like a 77 grain hollow point boat tail. So again, this is that OTM tack. You see I have a very defined boat tail. I have a very long bearing surface, which is the flat part on the side, which is going to make contact with my rifling. And I have a much shorter ogive, which is where the bullet points out. That is going to give me a couple of benefits. Those benefits are the fact that it's much easier to align straight into a bore when it goes into the chamber. That's important, because if it enters off center, you get run out, you get inaccuracies. I also have come on, brain. It's also less susceptible to things known as jump. So your bullet, for the most part, is never jammed into your lands unless you're a hand loader and you did that on purpose. For the most part, you're going to have a thousandths, measured in the thousandths, jump from where the bullet sits inside of the case into its contact with the rifling and lands. The ogive shape on a normal tangent ogive is going to be much more consistent going into that rifling, giving you less jump intolerance. The next version of it is something that kind of started coming from Berger's bullets, was known as the secant ogive. I don't know who did it first. Secant ogive has a much longer point. So when we start talking about a secant ogive, something like the AMAX is an actual pretty good example of a secant ogive. You will notice that there is far less of a bearing surface here, and the point going up is much longer and gradual going to the point. So, very ice picky looking bullet tip. What that's going to give me, though, is it's going to give me a higher ballistics coefficient because it makes the bullet sleeker. What it does give me, though, is the issue that you face sometimes with jump intolerance getting into the lands. So, the higher the BC, the more likely you are to see a secant ogive. A standard bullet with a decent enough BC is probably going to be falling into the tangent. And then you have what's known as a hybrid, which is a Berger world thing. When you look, actually, ooh, wait, we can show these together. All right, here we go. So this is a 77 grain Match King. The bullet next to it is a 70 grain Nosler RDF. Those bullet tips are vastly different in size. You see the hollow point is much different looking. This one's got a much more aggressive hollow flat boat tail to it compared to the 77. This is an incredibly highly ballistically coefficient bullet. We're talking about a G1 of a 416. So the higher the number, the better your ballistics coefficient. But this one actually functions as a hybrid. So what I've got when I talk about a hybrid bullet is I've got a shorter bearing surface like I would in a secant ogive. I have a much more pronounced boat tail, making my bullet more efficient. I have a much longer ogive where it goes up to the point of the bullet. But what I get, instead of having a very short bearing surface, is I get a step down, makes them slightly less jump intolerant. So they'd shoot better when you do this, but they also give you a higher ballistics coefficient, enabling you to achieve and maintain more speed, more energy downrange. They're also less affected by the wind. Match ammo is a whole different world, guys. Like, I could go really far into the weeds in this. Like, I barely scratched the surface of what it means to select ammo for long distance applications. And that's just fun fact of that there. So when we look at it, like, this is probably one of the cooler bullets I've got here on the table. So this is for my 6 ARC. This is the 110 grain A-tip. So these are like super, like, they come off of the line and they go into these trays. Not a lot of people touch them. They come with a bullet polishing cloth. Like, it's wild, but they are hyper accurate. And when I say hyper accurate, I mean 1/4 inch, 0.3 inch groups, 100 yards all day long. So when we talk about your rifle considerations, the most important part, and I'll hit this again, which is select your bullet based on your perceived problem. If you never think you're ever going to shoot through barriers, ever, for any reason, don't get a barrier round. Get something that dumps its energy very quickly. If you are expecting to only be making, you want to be able to have that primary engagement zone be in that 300 to 500 yard range, and that's what you're shooting for, but you still need to be able to function up close. Okay, you need a match bullet. I'm going to just tell you, you need a match bullet. Because for as good as varmint rounds and stuff are, they're not as accurate, and they don't carry as much energy downrange because they're not as ballistically efficient as something like a Match King, or an OTM TAC, or a Match Burner, or an ELD match from Hornady. They're just not. They're not going to be as efficient traveling over distances, carrying that energy downrange. Because once you fire a bullet, the bullet starts dropping. And yes, you could take a 45-70 and it's a bucket freight train at 50 and 60 yards. But that bullet will bury itself into the ground. It loses energy incredibly fast because it just doesn't have the efficiency designed into the bullet itself, meaning it cuts through the wind a lot easier. It's not as affected by wind because of its shape and design. A guy that, if you are interested in this stuff and you want to go further in the weeds, go check out Ron Spomer Outdoors. I love Ron Spomer's videos. He's like listening to your granddad tell you all the ways you were wrong, but he's super informational. He does some bullet comparison stuff and ballistics comparison, drops, trajectories, and energy comparisons that are off the charts good, because the guy's been in the game a very, very long time. So guys, there is your primer on bullets. If you want to know more about specific parts of it, varmint selection, whatever, let me know and I'll make the videos. I'm going to do these 30,000 foot views right now because it's going to take a special person to want to learn this much about bullets. I'm just going to tell you. So if you got questions, please let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. Again, go over to the Instagram page at UncleFreedom213 and shoot me a private message if you've got a pressing question you need me to see sooner than in the swarm of comments. So guys, I am Uncle Freedom. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and until next time, I'll see you later.